afternoon, everyone. Coach Leach is at the podium. We'll go questions in the room first. Go ahead and get us started, Theo.
Nick, did you have a chance to go back and look at the play where it looked like Porter Gustin may have kind of targeted Gardner and hit him in the head there?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any thoughts on it? Do you wish you could retroactively punish a player for something like that?
Well, I'm not allowed to comment on it, but I'll tell you the guy that can. Is I think you ought to call Woody Dixon at the Pac-12 offices. So I'd be happy to comment on it if I were allowed to, but I'm not allowed to. But if I were allowed to, I'd be happy to. But since I'm not allowed to, I suggest you call Woody Dixon at the conference office, and I'm sure he's got a telephone number. I'm sure he's got an email, and and anything we do in this conference, player safety should be the forefront of our concerns. So,
did it seem at all like Gardner may have been shaken up after that play, the rest of the drive, or could you sense that?
Not necessarily. Maybe. I mean, it's obviously was a lot of things, but I'm allowed to say it was a big hit.
And then on the 3rd and 6, was there any miscommunication on the offensive line as far as what play they should be blocking for, or
on which one?
The 3rd and 6 before the block field goal.
I didn't think we came off the ball as well as we can. The thing is that game's full of a lot of plays, and this thing was kind of sliced pretty thin as far as a lot of plays made, and I don't think that specific play. I mean, there's plays in the first quarter that could change the whole thing on all three sides of the ball. I thought we could have won that game on all three sides of the ball if we made one more play. In a lot of instances, just one more play. I mean, that's how close that deal was. And then, of course, we battled some stuff you probably shouldn't have to, but anyway.
Other questions in the room for Coach?
Utah is a #1 across the board in a lot of defensive categories. What makes them good?
Same thing that always makes them good. They're really physical. They're strong. They're physical. They're well coached. Kyle, always has had a philosophy on defense, and I don't know how much voice, but certainly whatever he wants on defense. And their defense is always similar. They're always very aggressive. They're always very strong up front. And the biggest thing that I think is they do the fundamentals really well. They're a real fundamental group. They don't try to really fool you. They just come right at you. They come right at you and here try to stop us. And so I do think they're really good. And it doesn't surprise me a bit. They're the top of this conference in defense. Based on all the other times we've played them in the past.
Is there anything you can kind of take advantage with their big defensive tackle being out for the first half?
And no, because the guy behind him is probably almost as good. That's how it always is. They kind of reload, but the biggest thing is we just got to go play good. We got to play well. We got to get a week better and play the best we can.
Does it excite you see what your offense can do against what's statistically supposed to be the best defense in the country?
Well, we've done that before. We've played Utah a lot, and I forget how many times. All the games are kind of similar. I mean, they're very physical, and they're trying to massacre the quarterback, and then and then if we put it in play, sometimes we get a little bit, because as you just get it off, sometimes they're manned up, and then defensively we got to stop their run, and we got to then the quarterback can run it a little bit too. So all of our Utah games, other than the first time we ever played them, have been battles. I mean, it's kind of gone our way, but I think this will be a battle too.
Coach, you and Kyle were at BYU at the same time as students. Do you have any memory of maybe any interactions in the classroom or anything like that?
Not a lot. He was, and our wives were there at the same time too. And I didn't know him. I didn't know him. Kyle was busy being an All-American linebacker and leading the nation in tackles, while I was trying to make sure that I did well enough on my courses to go to law school, so it was kind of a little bit different world. And then, of course, his dad, Fred, was the defensive coordinator, you know, and one of the most steely, intimidating guys on earth, you know. I mean, you'd walk on campus and Lavelle Edwards would say hi to everybody. And, you know, Fred just scared you. You know, he was just, you know, imposing, you know, just looked like, and looked in, from what I hear, was one of the toughest guys on earth. And then there's Kyle, so you just, by association, you tried to stay away from him too, and so did most of the teams that BYU played, except for he managed to lead the country in tackles. But he's a good guy, sharp guy, knows about defense, and does a good job.
Do you remember like going to games and watching him play and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, just yeah, he did a good job. He was like one of the top defensive players out there.
Yeah. And is it kind of cool for you that, you know, relatively for two guys as students in pretty opposite worlds can kind of end up at both as head coaches in relatively the same world?
We've got to know each other pretty fast because both of our wives have a lot in common, because even though we didn't know each other there's 28,000 students, but you know, we knew all the places, all the locations, and had very similar experiences. Yeah.
Questions in the room?
Mike, how do you assess your defense in that game Friday?
Yeah, you know, I thought we did some good things. We'd get 3 and out, or else we'd let them have explosives. You know, we'd let them off the hook with explosives. We've got to do better, you know, with regard to our technique on some of the pass interference things, I think. You know, and then I think that it was kind of feast or famine. You know, we'd either stuff them or they'd get a big play, and the biggest thing, we have to mitigate the big plays.
And what were your thoughts on Gardner and Aesop on that scramble TD?
I thought it was good. I thought it was very good. Well, first of all, you know, you scramble, you design kind of the landmarks you wanted to go, which I thought Aesop did a very good job of, because that's exactly, you know, where he's supposed to be. I tried to get in front of his hand. Gardner did a good job. You know, it was the scramble, I understand. The one thing he did impressive was he kind of made a guy miss, you know, just there on the edge, and then hit Aesop, you know. So, you know, I think scramble plays need to be viewed as an opportunity. I mean, you know, you don't necessarily plan for them, but when you scramble, you should convert your routes, and if you're in the right place, you can get some big plays.
Is there anything you can tell Gardner when it comes to the number of batted passes at the line of scrimmage? Anything you can tell him about that?
Yeah, you just got to try to throw in lanes. You know, I mean, USC's tall and did a good job getting their hands on the ball, and then you know, you got to try to throw in lanes instead of over people. But you know, and then I thought it was better the second half. You know, once a few cycled through. So
You guys haven't drawn many PI calls the first 3 games. Were there things that you guys have been doing that you kind of got away with that you didn't get away with on Friday necessarily, or?
Again, that's something I don't feel very safe about commenting on, but you know, I think anybody that saw the game can make their own judgments and probably you know, solve some things that might jump out to them, both positive or negatively, and you know, certainly in your case, you ought to address them accordingly. You know, you got to speak for those of us that can't.
You guys are averaging 9 penalties per game right now. Is that something that's concerning to you, or do you think that's going to work itself out?
I always gauge it by how many. I always gauge it by. And we weren't particularly high till this last game. I always gauge it by, you know, the amount that we get, the amount our opponents get, and then how many yards are we gaining or giving up. And right now, I think we're at like 30, which is decent. You know, I mean, it's like because our opponents get penalized a certain amount too. And part of it, I think, is because the play it's more open play and they can see it better, you know. And then the other thing is, I mean, if you play aggressively, you're gonna get some penalties. There's a lot of teams that, there's a lot of teams that are last in their league that don't have a lot of penalties. And, they say, well, at least we're real disciplined, we led the league in least penalties. Well, that's not always the case. A lot of times it's because you weren't aggressive enough to get in position to get a penalty, you know? And, so, you know, I think you gotta try to push it to make a play.
It's now 9 straight wins here at Martin Stadium dating back to 2016. What makes this one of the more difficult places for opponents to play?
I'd like to think our team does. But I think it's a special place to play. It's one of the loudest places in the conference. I think our student section, it's the best in the conference. And I've, you know, gone to all the other student sections and they're great, but ours is better. You know, ours is more lively. They've got more character to them. They've got, you know, everything from props to chants to, and just the general enthusiasm. Our student section is the best in this conference. And then, and I've heard that we're the second loudest. It's always hard to compare when you're the home team because it sounds different, you know. When you're the away team, you can gauge it better. But based on, you know, my colleagues and others, I mean, they say we're the second loudest, which, so I believe them. And then I think that the logistics of getting here, which really aren't very hard, but I think, you know, depending where they stay and whatnot, I don't know. But we're always excited, and this is, the other thing about it is this is a college town. This whole town, you know, people come here a couple days in advance. People are extremely excited about it. It's got the feel of, you know, of a true college town where there's a huge relevance to what's going on, as opposed to a major city where just a block away someone might not even know or care that you have a game, or if anything, feel inconvenienced by it. And I think that, you know, that creates a special atmosphere, so.
Let's go to questions on the phone line. Any questions on the phone line for Coach Leach?
I got one, Bobby. Mike, when you hear officials say, cite you for disconcerting signals, do you have, what is that?
I'll tell you what, I respectfully decline to comment on the grounds that I may be incriminated and get a $10,000 fine. Yeah, I mean, you know, it was so mixed, I can't entirely say what their position was, because it varied a little bit, but as far as any specifics beyond that, you'll have to call them and ask them.
Can I ask if you guys are doing anything different than you've done for the last 3 years?
We're not doing anything different than we've done for the last 3.5 years. Nothing different whatsoever, and nothing different than a lot of other teams are doing too. And nothing different than we are subjected to occasionally, or, you know, by our opponents, depending.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions on the phone line for Coach? Okay, and back in the room?
Can you talk about the play from your O-line this first 4 games?
I think they played good. Actually, if I were to, I think the O-line played good this last game in particular, because they're a big physical group that they went against. And, you know, and I thought they did a good job. The other thing, I think they continue to get better. I mean, they're continuing to get better, and they're a young group and continuing to get better. So I don't even think we've hit our, you know, our upside yet. So I thought with regard to our team, is, you know, they played better than some of the other positions. You know, we got to keep getting better. We got a ways to go, but I do think they're coming along.
Who won the bone?
We don't give the bone if we lose. So, no, you got to win. Yeah.
You guys went to Travell in the punt return game for kind of the first time this year. Did you see Kyle and Travella kind of flipping at that spot? throughout the
Yeah,
year?
maybe, maybe. I mean,